Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Last episode, we are gonna be into a deduction and we found out we're covering another murder scene. Pog. I don't know why it's Pog. But yeah. Anyways, let us start with Mr. Sholmes' deduction. But of course, let the theatrical tragedy before us be unraveled by the great deduction presented to you for your pleasure in 2 acts. We've heard some truly astounding great deductions from Mr. Sholmes in the past. No doubt this will be no exception. What miracles will unfold before our very eyes this time. So my dear fellows, for your delight and wonder, let the curtain rise for Sherlock Sholmes, Logic and Reasoning Spectacular Act 1. The Great Deduction. The game is afoot. Topic number 1. The cause of death. Careful observation of the victims reveals to us the events that transpired out of this disconsolate room last night. Can't even speak that name. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates the use of poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate, which contains, you will observe, one half sizable bar of soap, meaningful, indubitably. Why is this soap set so purposely upon the dish, like the victim's last supper? In fact, yes. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course, the fork reveals the answer. Question mark. It appears that the young man's appetite was his undoing. Taking up his arms in a form of cutlery, the victim engaged in deadly battle for his life. Yet the struggle against his hunger was in vain, for in the end he couldn't resist devouring the slippery feast. But London's foul soap is besmirched by the foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by the poison that tainted the contents of the plate. The soap and the ladder about the young man's mouth are too perfectly matched to ignore. And the cause of death was clearly intoxication due to the excessive ingestion of the foul soap. Though personally, I have greater interest in the taste of foul candle wax, of course. Okay, that's your conclusion. The poisoning from soap ingestion. Sure, he just somehow ate poison from soap, okay? Topic number 2, suicide or murder. The cause of death identified, we proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this suicide or murder? The audience will recall that death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man dine alone? This single teapot suggests the answer. To draw a conclusion of such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. The careful criminal would have absconded with his own cup to cover his tracks. Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. Huh? Though forced open now, at the time of the incident, door was locked. And the sole key was in the victim's pocket. In other words, when the victim consumed the poison, he must have been alone. Alone with his inferior self, from whence he wafted an inferior scent. And with that acrid aroma lingering in the air, the victim met his end in tragic solitude. We can take comfort only in the fact that his soul was well cleansed on his way to the hereafter. I like how the outfit changed despite me having a DLC. No possible perpetrator present. Thus concludes the final act of Sherlock Sholmes' great deduction. So, suicide. You really believe it's a suicide? We're so speechless, of course. Oh, this great deduction is so accurate, right? There's just one thing, Mr. Sholmes. You are disposed to identify just one thing, aren't you, Mr. Naru? Pray, what concerns you? Well, no matter how hungry he was, do you really think the man would have just eaten soap? Let them eat cake, whatever. It is quite apparent that this man had barely had a penny to his name. It's a curious thing, but to be one so destitute, soap can suddenly appear quite irresistibly appetizing. How extraordinary. In truth, I've tried little soap myself in the past. Why? Why? What is wrong with you people trying soap? You've eaten it, you mean? My dear fellow, was some time long ago. Now, my postulation was that it would cleanse my gut. And did it? As I writhed in agony on the floor and spit the contents of my stomach, yes, I believe it did. So you admit you tried it, but the fact is it caused great amount of stomach pain. Experience taught me a valuable lesson. Soap is quite no shit. Yes, it's quite poisonous. It's quite an unpleasant taste that leads to great discomfort. In summary, I cannot recommend it. Believe me, I wouldn't eat it even if you did. There's something that troubles me as well, actually. Oh, what's that? Mr. Natsume. Oh! I couldn't help noticing him shuddering and quivering out in the corner of my eye. Almost as if Mr. Shrum's deduction touched the nerve somehow. Nonsense! What? He lost energy somehow? Well, that clenched teeth episode didn't last. I think, judging by Mr. Natsume's reaction, the great detective's deduction may need some gentle corrections in order to reach the actual truth. Yes, Mr. Shrum's observation and deductions are sometimes a little too sharp. He has a tendency to hit the nail on the side of the head and drive it into an obtuse angle. When he does that, it falls to us to straighten things out. Well, we're gonna fix his deductioning, I guess. Alright then, let's see what we can do. Yes, we must pick out the keywords in Mr. Shrum's quite brilliant deductions, and discreetly exchange them for something that makes a little more sense. If we can do that. Woo! I'm sure we'll arrive at what Mr. Shrum's meant to say in the first place. In that case, are you ready for the second performance of the day? Once again, my dear fellows, for your continued delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. For Sherlock Sholmes' Logic and Reasoning Spectacular Act 1. Here we go. Course correction. Hold it, Mr. Sholmes. Okay. Careful observation, blah blah blah, which transpired in this concert room last night. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates the use of poison, yes. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate, which contains, you will observe, one half of a sizable barb so meaningful, indubitably. Why is this soap set so purposely upon the dish, like the victim's last supper, in fact, yes. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? But of course, the fork reveals the answer. No. Well, you can deny that a fork implies the man is eating something or about to eat something. Yes, that's true. If I were to decide to eat some soap, I would prefer to use a fork than attempt it with chopsticks. And of course, only half the barbed soap is left on the plate. But might there be some other explanation? Like something material that proves whether or not the man really ate some soap? We just gotta find it. Teacup. Ow. Do you believe he was drinking tea with his soap? The cup tea was empty, so there's no way of knowing. Huh, how about this for an idea? Perhaps the cup was full of water, and he was dissolving soap in it so he could gulp it as much down as possible. Please remember that he might actually not been the soap lover that he's been made out to be. Do you think he could have been drinking tea? That could be the reason. Plus, mic problems for no reason whatsoever. Okay. Just gotta adjust myself. There we go. Other piece of soap. Look, there's more soap on the floor here. Mr. Shakespeare must really love the stuff. Let's not jump to conclusion, Mr. Nara. Look closely at the soap. Do you see that it would fit together perfectly with the half bar on the table? What the? How can that be? I think that they are two halves of the same bar that broke apart. The question is, why? Is the question. I suppose you eat soap with a fork. Would you? I don't think it's a question of which implement you'd use. You should eat soap, full stop. But then why does the man have a fork in his hand? Does he just want to show it off? Or something? Oh dear, I understand your frustration, Mr. Naruhodo. But please don't take it out on me. Why does he have a fork? It's the goddamn question. Okay. The point is, if we decide the man used this fork to eat the soap, we wouldn't be changing to Mr. Sholmes' deduction. We really ought to consider some other clues. Is there anything else that I should be worried? Wonder what is it? I think I'm either biased on either the teacup or the other piece of soap, if I'm gonna be very honest right now. Teacup doesn't really say much, because you don't even know what's inside. Maybe the other piece of soap. Alright, let's present this. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course! The other piece of soap reveals the answer. It being the other half of the soap on the table, in short, the victim was not eating soap at all. But it's obvious, really, for no depth of hunger could drive any man to attempt to eat soap. But even I, with my unquenchable thirst for practical knowledge, took only a single bite. But that begs the question of how the man was poisoned, because there's no sign of any food on the table. An excellent observation, Mr. Naruhodo, and one that furnishes us with the answer we seek. For London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the contents of the plate. Nope. Mr. Sholmes is still pushing the soap argument then. Perhaps he's suggesting that the man licked the soap rather than ate it. If soap in London is that poisonous, I don't think I want to be washing my hands with it. But there are no signs of any food in this room at all. Of course, food isn't the only thing that passes people's lips, is it? Tea? The contents of the plate is just the soap again, isn't it? Well, you know there's a saying in Japanese, don't you? If your food is poison, you might as well eat it plate and all. What? That's what they say in Japanese? What the heck? Well, I guess that's your logic for... I'm kind of speechless, I don't know. Well, there is an image. All I can picture now is the victim first taking a bite of soap, and then the plate. The soap like some tofu, and the plate like some giant rice cracker. Oh dear, that sounds like a very bland combination. Alright, what else is there? Are we still focusing on the teacup? Yes, a western vessel for the serving of infusions of dried tea leaves. The teacup, Mr. Naruhodo, as you well know, stop putting on airs. It's empty. So we have already established that the victim wasn't eating soap when he died. However, there's significant evidence to suggest that he was drinking tea. My thoughts exactly. And I believe it's... Can Are we gonna highlight the fork as well? Highlight the fork! Victim didn't eat the soap. Then what did he eat? Yes, it's a real mystery, isn't it? I feel like the game is taunting us when we know the answer already. I've got it. He wasn't interested in eating the soap, but it was this fork he wanted to satisfy his hunger with. Okay. We're surely just gonna think that we could just eat a fork. A metal fork. So Naruhodo, I really don't think it's helpful to continue with this line of reasoning that the gentleman had peculiar tastes. Sao-san has a gentle way of words when I know I've been told off. Okay. Yeah, it's a teacup. I think there's no other answer. Alright, to present. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the teacup. Indeed, cups have been the vessel of choice for practicing poisoners over the centuries. And it would appear that this victim drank every last drop. And there's no sign of food anywhere in the room. Which leads us to the immutable conclusion. The cause of death was clearly intoxication to the ingestion of poison contained in this teacup. And the conclusion, poison in the tea. Not my tea. The cause of death identified, we proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this suicide or murder? The audience will recall that death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man die alone? Does this single teapot suggest the answer? Ah, the Western vessel for infused hot drinks again. It's already featured heavily in our deductions so far. Yes, we can imagine that shortly before his death that Mr. Shamsby was having a drink of tea. But there will be nothing remarkable about that, but what troubles me is Mr. Natsumi's reaction when he heard Mr. Sholmes suggest it. That means there could be something else besides the tea. There's more to this deduction than it seems. Let's closely examine the scene of the crime again for some more clues. Question is, what? It's empty, and it's the only cup on the table. It appears so, yes. And when you consider those facts, Mr. Sholmes, reasoning seems highly logical. But it's always in the same in these deductions. The real truth is always buried a little deeper than the great detective suggests. So Naruhodo, you seem very dubious about Mr. Sholmes all of a sudden. Okay. The fork again! The fork again? The victim just seems to be holding it so pointedly. It makes it impossible to let go of the idea that it must be involved somehow. Well, let's hope it turns out to be a useful clue in the end. What else? Oh, is that other teacup? It's another Western vessel for it. It's a teacup! And it is too empty. Given that he's actually holding this one in his hand, you can assume that this is the cup from which Mr. Shamspeare was actually drinking. But if that's the case, this changes everything. Everything we deduced up to now is turned on its head. How did I not see that? I have a bad feeling about this. I almost don't want to say it. Yes, I know exactly how you feel. Yeah, I think it is the other teacup. Did the man die alone? This other teacup suggests the answer. Yes, there are two teacups in this room all along. In other words, this is a strong indication that the victim's last supper, there was a guest present. At the very least, we can say now with certainty that somebody else was here in this room last night, taking tea with the victim. Whoa, what are you talking about? Utterly, unbelievably, unjustly, unreasonable. Draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. In which case, what more can we deduce about the possible guests at the table? Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Do you mean to say you know exactly who was in the room at the time of the victim's death? Indeed. What reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. I'm not sure I like where this deduction is going now. Now we went off track for a bit. I'm afraid it's too late to go back to the halcyon days of eating too much soap. But the identity of the guest who was in here last night when the victim passed away is something I have a very bad feeling about. Well, you could try to ignore your feelings, but we cannot ignore the truth, Mr. Naruhodo. No, I suppose not. Time to look around again. Oh dear, the latch is most definitely broken, isn't it? The door was kicked in by Mr. Natsume, according to what Mr. Gerdev told the inspector. Who knew his short, thin legs had so much strength in them? I'm not sure the length of his legs is in any way significant here, or the fact that he's old. Perhaps this says more about the poor state of the door than about Mr. Natsume's strength, actually. Careful, if he overheard that remark, he almost certainly have a lively response. I don't know. Can this broken lock really tell us anything about who was here? Empty bottle. It's empty. Empty of liquid, but full of air. That makes you think, doesn't it? It makes me think that you're full of hot air. Oh, that was a sick burn. That was a sick burn, Susato. You should be thinking about who else was in the room at the time. Makes me think that you're full of hot air. Bother. Susato-san's quip in response was cleverer than my original riddle. That's so sad. He got burned there. At first glance, it seems that the only things in this room are the makeshift stage and the costumes. I overlooked these 3 books initially. Wonder what they are. Let's see. The titles read: The Picture of the Monsieur Lecoq, Country Yearnings, and A Meal for Gabbro. Wait, I'm sure I heard those titles before. It could just be an incredible coincidence, but they're the exact same 3 books that Mr. Natsume purchased the other day. Nani? Yes, on the day of unfortunate incident when Mr. Green was stabbed. So Seki-san had just been to a bookstop and bought them, that's right. And now that those 3 titles are here in the room of the victim, yet Mr. Natsume never claims to have been here before. We got him, boys! We got him. What does this mean? Do you think... I really don't know what to make of it. But why? Pile of familiar books. Dun dun dun. Huh, there's a candle here for no reason. Don't tell me that's a candle. Even Mr. Shakespeare didn't eat candles, it seemed. We already established that he didn't eat soap either. Do you think perhaps the guest brought us this candle here last night? Surely. Even if he or she did, does it reveal anything about the guest's identity? Good point. There goes my idea. Stuffed out like that candle will be. If you sigh so deeply, Mr. Naruhodo, you're in danger of blowing out the flame. Feels bad, man. Okay. So, I think it's already pretty obvious. Yeah, it's pretty obvious that it's the frickin' books. It's literally the books. Because these are the exact same books that he purchased. And he left them here. Indeed. What reveals the answer, of course, is the pile of familiar books. Quite so. It's no mere coincidence that these 3 titles are here in this room. It's the link to the truth. Mr. Natsume, you purchased these books 4 days ago. at the second-hand bookshop. That's just a coincidence! In that case, you'll be able to bring the same 3 tiles from your own room, will you not? This very moment. Oh shoot. No, never, non-negotiable! Can't bring your own copies here. Proves that these 3 books are in fact yours. We got him, boys. Having purchased the books 4 days ago and returned to your lodging, you were arrested the very next day. So you conceivably have brought the books here on that evening, but you never mentioned that. In other words, you can only have brought these 3 books here to the victim's room. I like that. Last night, having returned to your lodgings after the trial concluded at the Old Bailey. In short, there's only one possible conclusion. Victim died here in this room last night as a result of poisoning. And that same night, the victor had a visitor. And that visitor was you, Mr. Soseki Natsume. Guilty. Thus concludes the final act of Sherlock Sholmes' great deduction. There we go. Yeah, in conclusion, Soseki Natsume was at the scene. Mission solved. Deduction complete. It's elementary. There we go. That was a pretty long deduction. Not again, not again, not again. Not again! Well then, Mr. Natsume. Well, Gregson, you've been quiet for a while. Alright, we're back. Got rid of noise. Technically.
It would appear that you have to accompany me down to the yard. Again.
But wait! Hold your horses!
Yes.
Door, key, locked, entry, exit, entirely impossible! He's so flustered he's being even stranger than normal. But are you aware it is a lock? Is it a locked room mystery? I don't know.
What? You think that's an alibi? You could have just made a copy.
What?
You live in the same building after all. You had plenty of opportunity, I'm sure.
Misery me! Well, feels bad for him.
Sorry, sir. You'll get your chance to your side of the story later.
Facts speak for themselves, Mr. Mustache. You horrible Sherlock Sholmes! Sherlock Sholmes! You just sold him out twice in a row! Are we the bad guys? Or are we the good guys? That's the question. He really has found himself an arch rival now, hasn't he?
Now, come on now, no dilly-dally. Outside, there's a carriage waiting.
Welcome, student of Mr. Haruhodo Esquire. I never imagined I'd be in a position again, but you have to help me, please, please. I'm innocent. Yeah, sure, you're innocent until proven guilty. You're proven guilty. Alright, I understand. We'll come to your cell later and talk about it. And one more thing. Oh, yes? My poor little kitty cat. Please give him his breakfast for me. And so, his evil curse still apparently unbroken. Soseki-san found himself once again the prime suspect in a case of murder. Thanks to the incriminating deduction of the great detective. Thanks, Sherlock Sholmes. My dear fellow, that honor belongs to you. Well, it is what it is. Well, at least that means that Inspector Gregson is no longer here. We can examine the crime scene in more detail now. Yes, that's right, and of course, what? Or Nani. Have you forgotten what the inspector mentioned before? It was the landlord, Mr. Garadeb, who discovered Mr. Shamspear. Ah, Mr. John Garadeb, yes. I expect we could find him sitting in his sitting room on top of the floor as usual. Right, we must remember to go and talk to him later, and then... Alright, we got some crime scene investigation. Oh, this is some sort of makeshift stage, I think, isn't it? Where does the audience sit, though, for the nightly Shakespeare performances? Actors inspiring to the great stage must practice their art Mr. Naruto with or without an audience. In fact, on a related note, perhaps you should set up a mock bench for the defense in your office. I like how we made a name. Instead of William Shakespeare, we got William Shamspear. What a version this game is. Sherlock Holmes, or Sherlock Holmes, whatever. Nani. Then you could practice your arts every single day. I'll think about it, if you promise to don a beard and play the role of the judge. Well, if that would help you achieve your goal, this I have to see. I cannot imagine her have a beard. Is there anything that seemed out of interest? This is a gas wall light, isn't it? It must be connected to the gas pipe in the wall. Gas lights, a gas stove. London really is a city of gas. Now that I think about it, Mr. and Mrs. Garadeb had an open fire on the top floor, didn't they? Oh yes, you're right. I don't recall seeing a gas stove up there. Well, I pretty much prefer a real fire anyway. It's so much cozier. And here we have another disproportionately large machine. This looks like a meter of some kind. Oh, this is a gas meter, I think. It seems that in this district, residents pay for gas as they use it with coins. I see. And now you've pointed it out, I can see that there's a lot of slot just here. There's a slot just here that looks like it would take a coin. So you mean if you put a coin in here... That's right, that would buy you about 2 hours of gas for lights and heating. So, if you were a poor person with no money, you have to sleep in the freezing cold. Yes, or if you were a scatterbrain with no change, because you forgot to exchange your money at the bank, thank goodness there's no meter in our office. I see. So that's how it is. Oh yeah, I forget there's always a brick wall in front of the window. As we've seen from the outside, the window is completely bricked up. Vestige from the former window tax that Britons had to pay. There was a window tax, I forgot about that. Window tax. What strange things do you use to tax in Great Britain? I mean, making people pay for the number of windows they had in a property? It's extraordinary. You tax my windows? How can you tax my windows? What happens if I don't pay for it? Oh, we'll just put a wall in front of your window. Oh, screw you. Okay. It's heartbreaking to think of the poor having to block up their windows just to avoid an unaffordable tax. Oh. What is it, Mr. Sato? If you look closely, a number of the bricks are loose. Huh. Oh yes, it looks as though an amateur has broken out and a few of them just here. Was it Mr. Shamspear who did it, I wonder? Being the lodger renting this room? Now look at this, Mr. Naruhodo. On the outside there's a little ledge. There's something on it. What? Oh, outside? Brr, it's so cold outside, you can feel it through this gap. It did snow all at last night, it would be cold. But more importantly, what is on the ledge out there? And what are those snow-covered lumps? It's more bars of soap. Soap? More bars of soap doing line up in the ledge outside the window. I have no idea. The pair of them look rather charming like that. Still, it's very strange, isn't it? Bars of soap line up outside the window. Thinks perhaps we should take one. There are two after all. Oh dear, I suppose we could. Oh, what's this? Look here at the soap. Ah. Do you see what in the middle there? There's a patch that's a different color. It's some sort of transparent. It's sort of transparent, but some sort of fancy design, I suppose. Only in Great Britain. It looks like Hinomaru flag of Japan, doesn't it? How wonderful. It probably is a very expensive brand. Expensive now? What's it doing in this ramshackle old room? This bar of soap had been entered in the court record, blah blah blah. Alright, we can check the court record. Blah blah. Yori books. We got the 3 books. Nearby street map. So Natsume's lodging was over here. Well, the incident before took here. Bourbon books, Yori books. Calabash Road, blah. Yeah, it's starting to sound familiar from the 4th case, obviously. Barb soap. This part of the different color. It's an exquisite design, isn't it? Trust the British to turn a boring barb soap into something special. I quite like it. It reminds me of the Hinomaru design of the Japanese flag. Expect this is a rather expensive soap. That doesn't seem likely, given who it belongs to. Maybe... What if... What... Why was it a circle? Did they do it like that? Or something? I guess not. Look at all these extravagant, bright costumes. Somehow they look out of place in this room with its grim, shady going-ons. This one looks like a Night King's attire. A king? I've always dreamt of being a king. Oh, I think you'd be more suited to a feudal lord, a daimyo, or such. I don't know these names. A Cronage Topknot? Every Japanese man wishes to know he has a these weeb names I haven't heard of before. Oh, you look wonderful with one. And you already have the sword. Can you imagine what would happen if I walked around the streets of London with a Cronage and a sword? There's not much on these shelves, is there? Just this wine glass and a bottle. And both of them are cracked. Yes, not much use, are they? What's the matter? Oh, I was just reminded of the Reaper, that's all. The Reaper of the Bailey. Prosecutor Lord Von Zeeks. You guys are gonna be excited to hear the return of Lord Von Zeeks' voice. I make a great impression on his voice. Yes, he's so reckless with his wine glasses. I was thinking it's a waste and that he should donate some to the needy. You could suggest it next time we meet. What else is there? One of the teacups that Mr. Shamspeare and his guests drank from last night. Don't go drinking from them, Mr. Naruhodo. There's bitter poison inside. I'm not planning on drinking any, don't worry. Anyway, the cups are both empty. That's true. So, one was Mr. Shamspeare's, and the other one must be the cup that Mr. Natsume was drinking from. But Soseki-san wasn't poison, of course. Perhaps we should take these so we can examine them in more detail later. A pair of teacups has been entered into court record. Another court record, it seems. This is the teacup from which Natsume was drinking. Yes, unlike the other one, the inside of the cup is completely clean. I suppose he must have drank the contents before the tea had a chance to leave a mark. I always gulp it down, too. Oh, sorry, Mr. Naruhodo? Oh, if you just sip it little by little, it goes cold. Clearly, I should have not instructed you in the proper way to take tea. There is no tea ring inside of Mr. Natsume's cup. Huh. What happened to the tea ring? Now that I looked at it. What about the other cup? This must be the cup that Mr. Shamspeare was drinking from then. It's stained on the outside. Tea does that, I'm afraid. It congeals. Even green tea. Oh, really? I never noticed that before. You never notice? Well, I never leave it in the cup long enough to leave it a mark. I like to gulp it down. Drink tea while it's hot. That's the Japanese way, or Weebanese way. Nipponese way, isn't it? Oh dear, so many people seem to have the wrong idea about our culture. And most of them are Japanese. Is there anything on the bottom of these cups? And nopers, indeed. Okay. What else is there? Oh, the poor man. So young to die. Do you suppose it was a very painful death? Being poisoned as he was? I don't know. All we can do is hope that he'll be reborn to a better life. Yes, I suppose you're right. I wonder. Do you think that putting our hands together in a Japanese prayer will help a British soul? Sorry? I made sure I had a reference at the ready just for such an occasion as this, actually. This book is entitled The Beginner's Guide to Praying for the Departed, the British Way. That is a very long and weird scuffed title. I'll just reread it now. One moment. There's quite a spine on that book, isn't there? Is there anything else? I think that's it. Na 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 na. Okay. It looks like we can go to other rooms, of course. Garrett room, Briar Road, prison. Shom's suite, Miss Green's hospital bed. Alright, let's go to Garrett room. Here we are again, the eccentric landlord's eccentric top floor abode. We're here because Mr. Garrett the one who discovered the incident this morning, don't forget.
Aw, you chap, sir.
I'm gonna give him similar to Gregson's voice. Yes, good morning, sir.
Thank you for your cooperation in court yesterday.
It was quite a trial. As much for Mr. Garrett as anyone, really.
Come straight back here after all this business at the Bailey yesterday. Didn't expect to wake up to more bally nonsense this morning.
I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling us exactly what happened, Mr. Garrett?
Ah, yes, I suppose you'd like to know about that dead loss of an actor chap in the ground floor room.
Those were exactly Inspector Gregson's words, weren't they? And before we talk to this person, let us explore and find more memes. Whoa. Oh, a copy of the Rents magazine. The Adventures of Herlock Sholmes is being read at all over London. Isn't it wonderful? I'm sure it is.
Naturally, one asks oneself if such a singular detective could really exist. But having met the chap, it's undeniable he is most certainly singularly dangerous.
That genuine public opinion for you, Mr. Sato. Perhaps it should be reflected in the stories? Make no mistake, Mr. Naruhodo. I intend to snuff out the sort of public opinion we just heard personally. I'm starting to see where Mr. Sholmes' untainted reputation comes from now. Oh, cannon. There's a single apron drying on this enormous cannon-shaped clothes horse. Look. No, Mr. Naruto, that's a real cannon. I bet he brought that back to his house after the war. I knew that. I was just testing you.
Piece of history, that is. Seen plenty of action on the battlefield, I could tell you. Now, the old girl and I are just enjoying the peace and quiet retirement together. And of course, she'd come in handy if the enemy decided to launch an attack again.
Is there a war going on I don't know about? Okay. You have your army suit. That's your military uniform, isn't it, Mr. Garridib?
Well, ceremonial guard, yes. Been hanging on the wall ever since my retirement bash. Not into active service now, you know. Doesn't mean much to me anymore. You could have the old thing if you wanted it.
Well, it might suit Lord Von Zeeks, perhaps. An overly ostentatious outfit like this could be just what he needs. Very tactful, Mr. Saddle. Very tactful indeed. Good to see Mr. Garrett's Medal of Honor still proudly displayed on the wall. The inscription reads, "For distinguished participation," if you remember. Yes, I remember, because I remember thinking even I might stand a chance of picking up honors like that.
Wouldn't you like to know? Wouldn't know if you would look at me now, perhaps. But I had my devil-may-care days, you know.
Devil-may-care? What did you get up to?
Well, all in the past now, of course. All best left there.
Best not? I want to know now! Oh well. Not that you could really do much about that. Yes, those enormous mortar shells. It's quite something seeing them up close, isn't it? Didn't you say something about firing them into the barracks, Mr. Garridib?
You remember, do you? Just a little mishap that occurred during training one day. "What are you doing firing your own men?" the captain bellowed at me.
I'm not surprised. A little mishap doesn't really do it justice, does it?
Well, one has these little incidents when one's hot-headed young private.
Perhaps I should put some evidence that resulted from one of my little mishaps on display. Oh, does a great lawyer like the great detective want to exhibit some trophies of its finest moments? Yeah, I think I'm good to go. We don't need to know what bad history I have with these cases. We know what that secret is hiding now. The aftermath of the fiery altercation the other day.
Don't suppose I'll be able to clear that mess for some time now.
Oh dear, must be a very difficult situation for you.
I'll say, people talk about twisted fates and whatnot. But this is a twist and a half. A rotten show all around.
He's clearly struggling with everything that's happening. And there's a good view over at the wintry East End from up there. An oppressively gray scene. There's really nothing comparable in Japan. And down below, Briar Road, partly blanketed in snow. And the pavement where poor Miss Green was struck in the back by that knife. Think about it, this is the only room in this building that actually has a window to the outside world. Sometimes Great Britain really does like its strange land, doesn't it? I suppose it's all foreign cultures seem it strange at first. Imagine how an Englishman would feel on arriving in Japan and seeing people with a Chonmage topknot. Well, that's a good point. Well, what else? That's an impressive collection of cakes on that fancy silver cake stand there. I feel sure it was full of cakes when we first investigated in here as well.
Yes, quite right. I haven't touched it since. Haven't done much at all, really, since it all happened. Time's really stood still for me, you know.
Oh, time has stood still. Now that's an interesting phrase. I might be able to use that excuse when I'm next supposed to be tidying up the office. You could just tidy up, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, great. Mr. Naruhodo can't clean for himself. These shelves look like they've been completely torn apart by the wild beasts.
Reminds me of the Battle of Maiwan, don't you know?
Ah, the experiences of a seasoned veteran.
Enemy had us surrounded on all sides. We really thought we were done for. The Holy Bally Company. We were taking a real pounding from their cannons, so all we could was run for our lives.
Oh, I thought that story was going in a different direction, actually.
Well, the whole experience taught me one thing, I could tell you. When you're done for, you're really done for.
Ugh. That's not what a lawyer who often finds himself under fire wants to hear. Okay. Let's talk to him. This morning's incident must have been a real shock for you this morning. I hear that you discovered what had happened.
Well, that hopeless actor chap rises to at 5 o'clock sharp every morning without fail. But at 30 minutes this morning, he still hadn't lit the grass. So I went down and knocked on his door, but no bally answer.
Oh, and that's when you broke into his room by kicking down the door?
Well, I called on that rum-looking Japanese chap to do the grunt work, of course.
So I'm guessing you probably broke down the door. Yeah. Maybe that was definitely you. Wasn't it a little premature to kick the door down? That man could have just slept by half an hour. That's very true, Mr. Naruto. If 30 minutes oversleeping warranted such behavior, I'd have to kick your door down every morning.
You know, better to be safe than sorry and all that.
Is it just me, or is he avoiding our gaze now all of a sudden? Except that was a very sorry situation indeed that you found us on the far side of the door. The victim's name is Mr. Shamspear, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, William Shamspear.
What a sham.
Took the ground floor room 3 months ago now.
And how would you describe him?
As an idiot? In a word, destitute.
Destitute? What does destitute even mean?
Well, let's face it, the only redeeming feature of that room is the cheap rent. Anyone who wanted to live in a place like that is either broke or has a bally screw loose.
So hard to choose which category Saseki-san would fall into. Definitely broke. Definitely broke. Mr. Naruhodo, it's a little rude.
It was doing research as well.
Research? Into what?
Shakespeare, of course. Shakespeare.
Oh. So there really is a Shakespeare. He just happens to be a sham.
Read a few plays about the old Bart myself, you know. Romeo and Hamlet and all that.
Ah, yes. William Shakespeare is the English most highly regarded passive player and author. So that guy's literally a damn sham. Damn Shamspear, okay. He's known as SAO in Japanese. You mean Sword Art Online? What? Sword Art Online? I'm just kidding. As you know, some of his many works have already been translated. Seems incredible that Shakespeare was certain to SAO though. Sword Art Online. Someone who was too heavy-handed there. There were a lot of costumes in the victim's rooms actually weren't there. Of course, Mr. Natsumi is a scholar of English literature as well. I imagine he and Mr. Shamspear would have much in common. Shakespeare, interpretation disagreement leads to shocking murder. Let's hope it's not that. Mr. Naruhodo? Really? How rude. Damn, you're a savage, Naruhodo. After Mr. Natsumi's trial yesterday, you came straight back here, I believe, didn't you? Did you notice anything strange between them, then and this morning?
Well, now, must have been about 6 in the evening by the time I got home. Snow was coming down rather heavily as I remember. It was completely dark already. But that failed actor chap was out at the time.
Mr. Garadev noticed there was no light from his room or something, I suppose.
Couldn't summon the energy for anything much, so I just sat in front of the fire up here. It was after 8 before Shakespeare got back. And the chap was up until past 1 in the morning, I'll have you know. Suppose he met his end and sometime after that. I was asleep by then, so I'm rather in the dark there.
Well, thank you. That was very illuminating. Is everything alright, Mrs. Sato? Well, I was just thinking it's a little strange, that's all. That Mr. Garadev, you were up in your room all evening, if I've understood correctly. Sus.
Not a big fan of stairs, not with this blasted leg.
Then, how could you kick down the door? How is it that you seem to know the precise movements of your tenant on the ground floor, I mean? That's a very good point. I can imagine that you could hear noises from the ground floor all the way up here. Does this old man like to spy on his tenants? Is that it?
I say, I know what you're thinking. It's a bally outrage. I'm ex-military, don't you know? I don't go around spying on my tenants. Why would I?
Then how did you know, Mr. Garritive?
It's the gas woman. The gas tells me everything.
We're just blaming everything on the gas. The gas. Speaking gas? What on earth do you mean, sir? How can the gas tell you anything, let alone everything?
Well, as you're probably aware, the gas is applied to the building by pipes.
Yes, I'd be more or less work that out. Every room in the building is connected by a single pipe to the gas main outside, and the gas company supplies gas to properties via the main. Yes, I understand that too.
Let me see if I can explain. Let's say I was to light the gas lamps up here. What do you suppose would happen?
Well, obviously the room would get brighter.
Exactly. At the same time, the lights in the room are all in the other rooms of the house would dim for a moment.
What? They dim? Why? Perhaps it's because when you light a gas lamp, it briefly uses more gas than usual, and that reduces the amount of gas in the pipe for the other lamps that are connected to it. That might explain why the other lamps dim momentarily, mightn't it? Yes, of course, because everything's connected to a single supply pipe. Is that supposed to happen, though? It sounds rather undesirable.
Jolly good point. The fact is, the gas company's pipes in these parts are pretty hopeless. And got any gas in them to start with. Opposite's also true, of course. Extinguish the lamp's lights up here, and they glow brighter than in the rest of the house.
Ah, right, I see. So by watching the flickering of the lamps in one room, you can determine what's happening elsewhere.
You've got it.
Of course, because when people come back home in the evening before they go to sleep at night, and what they're guaranteed to do is either light or put out their lamps and fires. Clever.
In point of fact, the room on the ground floor and the one above it uses slightly different amounts of gas. But by watching the lights in here closely, I can work out almost exactly what's going on here, the whole house.
Gosh, that's fascinating, Mr. Garritive. Absolutely fascinating.
Oh, well, nothing to it, really. I can't really see that's going to help us with the case either.
What I'd like to know is why Mr. Garritive is so interested in what his tenants are up to in the first place. And I feel like there's more to it than idle curiosity. Alright. We are running low on time, sadly, because I don't want to get too much gigs. So next time on The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, we're going to continue on with the investigation. And hopefully we can get enough time to do a bit of a trial. I don't know. I guess see you guys all next time.